Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting and San Bruno Successor Agency meeting of September 10th, 2013. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the flowers they always supply for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Here.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here. Mr. Rico, would you lead us to the pledge, please? To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. So we don't have any formal announcements this evening. Presentations. We're going to receive an update on the planned closure of San Bruno Avenue, September 20th to 30th, 2013, for the construction of the Caltrain grade separation. Raphael.
Great. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do tonight is just go through a shortened version of what was presented last week to the general public as part of our open house on exactly this topic. But I'm going to just focus on two aspects of it. One, just a quick status update of where we are on the construction, and then I'm going to really just focus on the closures themselves. So one of them was actually completed last weekend, so we're actually now down to two closures. There's also handouts at the front, if anyone's interested, showing details for both the closures, as well as there's a series of questions that came up during the public meeting, and we've attempted to answer those the best we could, and those are also available if anybody wants to take a look at those. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to give a quick status overview, talk about the upcoming road closures, and then just take any questions that you may have. So once again, why are we doing this? First and foremost, safety improvement. We're enhancing the safety for not just the driving public, but also for pedestrians, cyclists, etc. In addition, there's some other benefits from the grade step, improving access to the school, reducing wait times behind gates that are no longer going down and causing delays, and improving emergency response times, and just generally helping City San Bruno with the revitalization of the downtown section. So again, I'm sure everybody realizes what we're doing to do this. We're constructing 3 separate automobile grade separations and 3 pedestrian-only automobile. It would be on the other side, so. So really quickly, end of May of this year, trains up top, which is a huge milestone for us, and hopefully for those of you in the community, you can already see improvements, I hope, in the traffic. More to come in that. The final street lowerings, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight, will take place this month. At that point, the work is going to shift almost entirely to the platform. So we'll start doing all the work on the northbound platform. This is the section that was on top of the shoe fly. So the reason why we have to stage it this way, as everyone remembers, is we were running trains on that shoe fly until May. So essentially what we did on the east side, we're going to have to do on the west side. Now, I got that backwards. On the west side, we're going to do on the east side, and that takes us through to early spring of 14 for project completion. So road closures. So we're lowering the streets to their final configuration. We're also repaving all the transitions and tie-ins in their final configuration. So that means striping, sidewalk, curb and gutter, etc. Again, the reason why we had to do this at this juncture is we were limited because of the shoe fly and how steeply we could drop the grade. Now the shoe fly is out of the way, we can go ahead and lower everything to its final condition. As many of you know, we sent out not one, but 2 separate notices for the road closures. Unfortunately, we jumped the gun a little bit. We thought we could do it in August. Unfortunately, when we did lower Angus, we found the material was not as good as we'd hoped. So the soil we hauled out was actually of a lesser quality. What that means is I've got to take out more soil to put in more rock so that the material will end up with as good a road as we designed for. So that's why we got delayed. That's why we're talking about this in September. Street closures are going to be phased to minimize impacts to motorists. The notices did go out. We did have a public meeting last week to let the community know and discuss any of their concerns. There will be changeable message boards up at El Camino as well as at the off-ramp of San Bruno, and I'll talk about that in a second when I look at the big closure. And then just to point out, San Mateo closure did already occur, so that was completed last weekend. So this is the first of the two closures. This is this weekend's closure, San Bruno at San Mateo. I just want to point out this has changed slightly from what was presented last week. We've come up with an improvement on the closure. So the mailer and the discussion that went out to the community showed a complete closure of the northbound section of San Mateo, as well as the whole corner of San Mateo and San Bruno. Working with the contractor, we've come up with a way to do it in two pieces. So it's still the same total duration, meaning we'll close it Friday night and we'll open it Monday AM. But by doing it in two pieces, we'll allow traffic to be continuous up San Bruno. So we're not actually going to close San Bruno, even though it says San Bruno closed up at the top. We're closing a lane on San Bruno. So let me just real quickly go through the detours, and I'm going to hit the vehicular portion first, and then I'm going to kind of hit on pedestrians and their detour. So this section will be flagged, so it'll be one lane for both ways. So traffic going east or west on San Bruno will be flagged through here. There'll be slight delays as people queue up waiting to go through, but traffic will be allowed through. Likewise, San Mateo, there's going to be one-way flagging through this section. So basically, most motorists shouldn't notice much difference from where we are today. So what will happen Friday night is this section up here. So that's the east side of San Bruno, San Mateo will be closed, and then flagging will begin on the opposite lane. Then sometime Sunday, really early Sunday morning, that'll change, and traffic will then shift to the opposite side of the road, and we'll begin to work on the opposite side. Again, early Monday morning traffic, we'll see this open to traffic for the rush. For pedestrians, it's a little bit simpler because the sidewalks on the opposite side of the street will remain open. So what we'll have is signs up at 2nd Avenue and back on this side of Huntington, which will say, sidewalk closed up ahead, please use opposite sidewalk, and it will direct pedestrian traffic to cross the street and go around. So same basic scheme as with the vehicles. When one side's closed, pedestrians cross on the opposite side. Same story, roles reversed when the traffic switches. So this is September 13th through the 16th. So late Friday through Monday morning. This takes us to the more dramatic, what I call full closure of San Bruno, and that is essentially unchanged from what was shown to the public last week. And so, again, why do we have to close all San Bruno? It's not so much San Bruno itself; it's all the tie-ins for Huntington, and this whole section here has to be lowered, and according to accommodate that lowering of San Bruno, and there was just no way to do it in pieces, because eventually you end up with a car going off a big drop-off, and we couldn't do that on. So what does the detour look like? So depends where you're coming from, but in general, if you're from out of town, if you're coming to the airport, if you're traveling from another city through San Bruno that week, we're going to ask that you detour and bypass the entire area and go up 380 to El Camino. So we'll have signs on both sides saying San Bruno closed at San Mateo, through traffic, please use 380 to 101. However, obviously there's people who still have business to conduct in town, or for whatever reason don't take our detour and decide that they're going to go up San Bruno either way. So we'll have local detours. What that will look like is essentially if you're on San Mateo, Huntington going southbound, your traffic is going to get detoured onto San Mateo. So San Mateo has been widened, so we'll have the full width San Mateo, and the right turn and the through motion will all be allowed. So there will be flaggers at San Mateo's allowing traffic to go both north and south on San Mateo, and make left turns onto San Bruno. So if you're coming from South Linden, let's say, and you want to go to the freeway, you're still going to be able to make that turn. Likewise, if you're coming from the downtown and you want to get to the freeway, that's still accessible. What you won't be able to do is if you're coming from City Hall and you want to just go straight up San Bruno, then you're going to have to take the detour. So the detour will be signed to come up, don't have it in very large there, but Mills, and then Mills to Euclid, Euclid to Huntington, up Scott. Once you're back on San Mateo, then again, you can make a left onto San Bruno, or you can continue down San Mateo, as the case may be. Coming the other way, it's the same exact detour in reverse. So if you're on the freeway and for whatever reason, or you're coming from one of the avenues and you want to get to City Hall, same thing in reverse. You come up San Bruno, you're going to make a right turn this time onto San Mateo, you're going to go over Scott, and you're going to come up Euclid, Euclid to Mills, Mills to San Bruno. I should note that there will be parking restrictions for this 10-day period on both Euclid and Mills, one side only, so local parking will still be allowed on the opposite side. However, as you know, those are very narrow roads, and we're temporarily wanting to give people a little more space who are coming through there. Normally, you don't get a lot of traffic on Euclid. So let me talk for a second about pedestrian detour, what that looks like. So the dashed lines you see on this figure are pedestrian detours. And what they look like in general is if you're on San Bruno and you want to go to City Hall, you're coming from the school, let's say you're coming up 3rd, you would just go up San Mateo. However, the sidewalk detour would lead you all the way up to Keynes and back up Huntington. Because as part of this closure, we're actually going to be rebuilding the sidewalk on Huntington as well. So we actually can't detour traffic up there. That being said, there are 2 businesses that are actually within that impacted area, and access is going to be maintained the whole time to those businesses. So we'll allow pedestrian access along that section of sidewalk. We're also going to allow vehicular, so there'll be a flagger present, and signs will show that businesses are still open. So we'll still allow vehicles to the little mini mall there, or the adjacent, I guess the pizza place up on the corner. Access will still be provided. If you're a pedestrian and you're on the other side, you can either do that same exact detour in reverse, or similar to the vehicles, you'll be directed up Mills, Euclid, and up Scott Street. That's another option, depending where you're going. Obviously, if you're going north, that's probably preferable. So that's the detours for the main closure. The good news is this is the last full closure for the project. Once we're done this, there'll continue to be lane closures as we pave and do striping and things like that. However, this is the last time we'll have to completely close the street as part of this project. The other good news is when this is open, San Bruno will be in its full width configuration. That includes left turn pockets at San Bruno, San Mateo, and left turn pocket onto Huntington, which should really hopefully free up traffic a little bit. Because right now, anyone who wants to make that left, you've got people behind you waiting on you. Likewise, San Mateo will be paved on both sides. We've been constricting flow through basically half of what San Mateo is going to be. Will be in the full width from here on in. Contact info, any questions? We always like to give the contact info for public affairs, and then I can take any questions you might have this time.
Any questions for Rico?
To the chair. At the meeting, I know some of those questions that were raised are within this handout from the meeting, which I appreciate some of the follow-up. We talked about lighting along First. There was also a gentleman that lived on Pine that had the same concern as far as lighting.
Yes.
So I'd like to see that also addressed when you're reviewing that. I know some of the other aspects about the parking and the curbs and streets. That was some of the residents, I think, concerned as far as the condition that they're in. And if I'm not mistaken, what you had said is there was an assessment taken prior to the project. There will be an assessment taken after the project, street by street, and anything that has been nicked, dinged, damaged, etc., would then be taken care of.
Yes, that's absolutely correct, yes. So we're going to be meeting with the city starting next week to start going through, as you said, street by street, sidewalk by sidewalk, and seeing exactly where are the areas of concern, where are the areas where, construction traffic, it's not just whether we damaged it in construction activity, it's additional traffic volume, larger vehicles on the city street. If we caused it, we'll fix it. I mean, that's been our agreement since the start, and we intend to honor that. And it's just going to get down into the details. We're going to meet with staff and specifically go through, like I said, on a street-by-street basis. And then to answer your other question on First Avenue, yes, we're going to actually bring in a consultant to do a lighting study in that area to just analyze what kind of an issue we have, if we do have an issue, and what are potential mitigation strategies. We didn't really look at it as a problem, but as it was brought up to me in the presentation, I completely hear what the public is saying. I mean, that's there were individuals who were getting secondhand benefits from some of the lighting at Artichoke Joe's, and now that somebody built a great step in the way, that may no longer be the case. So that being the case, same thing. If we've changed a condition, if we've made something worse, we want to look at it and we want to make it good.
And I appreciate that because obviously there is wear and tear on the roadway and all that from all the construction, so obviously there's deterioration. One of the things too, and you addressed the other items, I won't go into each one of them, is at the end, when it is finally done and they cut the ribbon, one person was kind enough to say, I hope the neighborhood's invited, maybe even if it's neighborhood barbecue.
Yeah.
Between this, obviously, that area neighborhood has gone through much and a lot. I know it firsthand a little bit, and so I think that was one of the things between the city and your agency to make it a celebratory event, and I thank you for their understanding and patience.
Right, no, absolutely, and I think that was an excellent suggestion, and obviously we'll be talking with the city as we get closer to cutting a ribbon for this thing, but I mean, as you know, this has been a huge project for Caltrain, and I know it's been a huge, sometimes difficult for the city and for the residents. And yeah, we want to celebrate what will be, I hope, a very successful conclusion to it. But we also want to thank everybody for their patience, because I mean, the public has been very understanding. By and large, almost everyone has been really positive and understanding of the fact that we've got to do these kinds of temporary inconveniences, but it's ultimately for a better San Bruno when it's all said and done. So yeah, I think it's an excellent idea.
Anyone else?
Chair?
Irene?
I'm very concerned about the loss of 42 street parking spots. When did that happen?
Yeah. So I can talk about that. So you're talking about at First Avenue.
It says here 48 spaces. It's going to go from 48 spaces to 6. It's the street parking along the east side of First Avenue will remain the same. Okay, that's the side where the people have their houses. As previously, parking on the west side of First Avenue will reduce from 48 spaces to 6.
Correct.
So you say it so casually. It's 42 parking spaces in
Right.
a part that's hugely impacted already.
Right.
And then you say, or whoever answered this, that they're going to be added parking on Huntington, Keynes, and San Mateo Avenue. But that doesn't help First Avenue people and the surrounding people there.
Right. No, it's a very legitimate concern. I mean, obviously,
It's more than a concern.
I completely understand what a premium parking is in that area. I mean, many of the residential units in there have multiple vehicles, and it gets very crowded. I completely understand why someone would be concerned about that. Let me just say two things. One, the total amount of parking will increase as part of this project, street parking. So,
but not for First.
I understand that, but the total amount does improve, so that should give some relief to First Avenue. Another idea that was brought up at the meeting, which we'll be talking with the city, but I personally think is a good idea, is we're going to charge for parking at our lot right up the street, and we know that not everybody likes to pay for parking, and so one thing you can do to discourage Caltrain passengers from parking on the avenue would be, I don't know, some kind of local parking restriction. But to answer your fundamental point, I guess, which is that, wow, that's a lot of parking you're cutting out of there. We can take a look at it. We can see, I mean, what we have done is, those are non-standard lanes there today. We understand it's a pre-existing condition, but when we redid it, we looked at it like any other street design, and we said, what is the standard width parking? What is the standard width street? And we designed it accordingly. That being said, you're the city. You have jurisdictional authority over that. If there's something that can be done about the width of that street, and in return get that parking back, we're happy to do that.
Okay, but I'm totally confused. We looked at several pictures that showed the landscaping on First Avenue,
Right.
on the west side of that, and it had some bulb outs, and it looked like it lost maybe 4 or 5 parking things. It did
Okay.
not ever say 42,
Okay.
to my memory. So how come it's suddenly 42? That's huge.
I agree with you.
So I don't understand. It's just like, why is this suddenly here? So in the pictures, it never showed that. It showed parking on the west side, it
Right.
showed the landscaping, and then now it's not, there's no parking. So there's not going to be any parking except 6 spaces on that whole First Avenue
On the west side.
on the west side.
That's correct. But, you know, again, I mean, if that is an issue, and I can understand why it would be,
But why so late in the day? I mean, why now? We've been looking at this for years.
well, I mean, the plans have been available for 3 years. I mean, I don't know, it's just now. I think the issue has been that, you know, our collective focus has been on other aspects of this work. First Avenue has always been an issue, but all of a sudden, we're getting to the point, we're coming towards the closing, you know, months of the project, and we start looking at the specifics of First Avenue, and that's when it really got raised as an issue by the community, and I completely understand it as an issue. I'm not trying to be trite about it or say it's not a big deal to lose 42 spaces. I agree with you. It is a big deal, and I'm offering potential solutions for it. But to say you know, is it new? No. The plans have been the plans for 3+ years. I mean,
May I?
Through the chair, I mean, I'm just going to chime in. I know the city manager is waiting to speak also, possibly the mayor. I think we need to go back to what the plan was previous to 3 years ago, because, you know, there was a lot of discussion of how First Avenue was going to be affected. We did thoroughly discuss how we were going to treat the street. I mean, and this was well before there was a 4-track option.
Right.
I mean, we knew we had an area to landscape and to, you know, and to treat, and the parking was a major part of the discussion. So this is, yeah, I mean, it's almost surreal to think that, you know, that we're losing all these parking spaces. Obviously, we're not just talking about Caltrain travelers, we're talking about a neighborhood.
Correct.
So,
and I hear what you're saying, and I think the good news is what I'm saying, and maybe I'm not doing a good job of articulating it, is we haven't built that curb. There's time to fix it if that is an issue. But in order for me to fix it, I would have to have some approval from the city to basically construct what's there today. I mean, the width of that road, if it's acceptable today and it's acceptable in a future application, then we can fit every one of the parking spaces that we currently have, with maybe the loss of one where the bulb out is for the crossing. But in general, you would keep all the parking on the west side.
So if I could just, for clarity for people, what you're saying is that prior to any construction, the location of that curb that was there prior to any construction, for you to put it back to where that is a non-compliant or the amount of space for lanes and parking is not compliant with.
That's correct. But
Okay.
when we say compliant, I mean, ultimately, you're the jurisdictional authority that can grant waivers, can say, yes, it is compliant. I mean, there's any number of ways I mean, it's there today.
So at some point, some traffic engineer, some designer made a decision saying, we've got X amount of width for the east side of First Avenue, and then we have to have a certain amount of lane width
Correct.
for two-way highway, and then we didn't have enough for parking on the east side.
That's exactly correct. And obviously, we didn't do a very good job of bringing that to everybody's attention and saying, hey, look at this.
Think so?
And I agree. It's an
Okay.
issue. I mean,
Well, it's not a deal breaker, and I think the city manager is going to chime in, and we're going to look at it.
So, thank you for allowing me to speak. My suggestion is that this is obviously an important issue that really would benefit, I think, from our ability to actually look at the schematics and to understand the issues. And we will bring this issue back as a separate item for consideration by the City Council. I think that Mr. Bowen has been clear that it may not have been recently and adequately vetted with the City Council in particular and with the community. And it sounds as if, my hearing of this situation tonight, that there are decisions and choices that can be made still in the completion of the work that remains. So we will bring this item back to you for separate consideration and discussion,
Okay, and
if that meets council's needs.
No, I think that's a good idea. And when you do, I'd like a special focus on emergency response as far as changing the roadway.
okay, understood.
All right, any other questions for Rafael? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second presentation is to present a proclamation declaring September 2013 as National Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in San Bruno. I'll read this quickly. Whereas prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed cancer in men aside from skin cancer and the second leading cause of cancer death in men aside from lung cancer, and whereas the American Cancer Society estimates there will be 239,000 new cases of prostate cancer in the U.S. in 2013, resulting in an estimated 30,000 deaths, and it is estimated 1 in 6 men will develop this disease in their lifetime. And whereas the exact causes of prostate cancer remain unknown, but medical professionals have identified several risk factors that can increase a man's chances of developing prostate cancer. It is more common among older men and men with a family history of prostate cancer, as well as African American men also have a significantly higher risk both of developing and dying from the disease. And whereas early prostate cancer usually has no symptoms and familiar predisposition may be responsible for 5 to 10% of the disease cases, obesity and smoking are associated with an increased risk of dying from prostate cancer. Recent studies suggest that a diet high in processed meat or dairy foods may also be a risk factor. And now therefore I, Jim Ruane, Mayor of the City of San Bruno, do hereby proclaim September 2013 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the City of San Bruno and urge all men in our community and throughout the country to become aware of their own risks of prostate cancer, talk to their healthcare professional providers about prostate cancer, and whenever appropriate, get screened for the disease, which is probably the most important thing you can do. And I'm going to accept this because I'm a survivor after almost 16 years. So get out there and get it done. Thank you. Review of the agenda. Any changes anyone would like to make? Okay, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of August 27, 2013. Any errors, corrections, omissions? Seeing none, they'll be approved as submitted. The consent calendar, all items are considered routine or implemented earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff. Any action on the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Motion second on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearings. There are no public hearings this evening. Number 9 is public comment on items not on this agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation or interaction where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone like to address the council under public comment? Tell us your name and your street, please.
Marty Medina, Garden Avenue, City Council candidate. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, staff, friends, and guests. Like most San Bruno residents, I received my water, sewer, garbage bill last week. Here it is. $232.63 for 2 adults and a 1-year-old. I wasn't too surprised since I've been cutting back on my water use. I reduced the planting areas, and I only have 3 tomato plants this year. I knew the council voted on May 8th, 2012 to increase our water or sewer by an average of 10% for 5 consecutive years. As I campaigned this last week, I was repeatedly asked, why are the rates so high? The following is from the San Bruno City Council home website, and quote, San Bruno is governed by the City Council and operates under a council-manager form of government. As the policy-making body, it has the ultimate responsibility to the people of San Bruno and the implementation of all programs and city services. It approves all ordinances, resolutions, and major contracts, modifies and improves the budget, and has the responsibility of employing a city manager and city attorney. There's the answer. On my website, Marty Medina for San Bruno City Council 2013.com, I've posted additional facts, details, and newspaper quotes on why the rates are so high. I've also posted the outline of my plan to reduce the utility rates. So I invite everybody to come take a look. At the last council meeting, I repeated Council Salazar's question regarding the reevaluation of the unsustainable rate increases. I'm here tonight to see if any progress has been made. Has there been any study sessions or any reports available to the public? Basically, what has been done. I also asked why San Bruno has written off over $308,000 in sewer bills over the last 5 years. I believe I also asked how much were the water write-offs. I'm estimating combined $500,000 written off, not collected, and the citizens of San Bruno have to bear that cost. I also tonight would commend the council. They are the responsibility for insisting upon Caltrain to restore parking for all the residents on First Avenue and for insisting on the lighting improvements for a new pedestrian corridor. If anybody's gone down First Avenue, and I used to coach down there for 8 years, and it gets dark. So you're gonna put a new corridor, and if it doesn't have the light, it's gonna invite some problems.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Rico?
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue, Honorable Mayor Wayne, City Council Member, City Manager Jackson. Wearing my San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District Board hat, I just wanted to make sure that the city officials, city San Bruno residents know that this past Sunday, as part of the district's outreach, community outreach, Tina and Richard, along with my assistants, staffed the district's information booth at the Chamber Sunday Farmers Market. A number of shoppers stopped by our booth, and many had questions that Tina and Richard were able to answer. Information brochures and these mosquito swatters, they don't work on flies, I'm told, were given out. Councilmember Rico Medina received his, so I've left one for City Manager Jackson, the rest of the council, and I borrowed Carol's back, so I had something to show. Mosquito questions should continually be directed to District Manager Robert Gay at 344-8592. And on behalf of the district, I want to thank you, the city for your continuing support of the district and its programs and goals. And flipping my hat real quickly, I'm on the Chamber Board overseeing the farmers market, and we had an unexpected, unannounced inspection by the county ag inspector on Sunday. He was there for what seemed to be a long time. I was told he is one of the best. If he's going to find anything, he will find it. And he was able to give the West Coast Farmers Market and the Chamber of Commerce a complete clean bill of health. So I just thought you needed to have those 2 good pieces of information.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else? All right, move right to conduct of business. Our first item is item A, receive a report on the Grand Boulevard Initiative's Complete Streets Case Study and adopt a resolution appropriating $11,000 of Measure M funds to complete preliminary 25% design drawings.
Good evening, Mayor Rain and council members. I'm David Woltering, San Bruno's Community Development Director. The purpose of this agenda item is to update the City Council on the Grand Boulevard Initiative's Complete Streets San Bruno Case Study and to request $11,000 in City Measure M funds to complete preliminary 25% design drawings for that case study. I'll provide an overview of the staff report for you this evening, and I'll be accompanied in my presentation by two guests this evening. We have Megan Wessel, who's a representative from Samtrans, and we also have Terry Bottomley from Bottomley Associates, who is the design professional working on the case study project. 4 cities are participating in this case study project. Those cities are San Bruno, South San Francisco, Daly City, and San Carlos. The Grand Boulevard Initiative, or GBI, is a collaboration of 19 cities, 2 counties, various agencies to improve the performance, the safety, and the aesthetics of El Camino Real for all users. The case study area extends from Daly City, the city limit, the northern city limit of Daly City, all the way into San Jose. And the segment here that we're looking at in San Bruno is from San Bruno Avenue to Taylor Avenue. The intent of this case study project is to develop street improvements for corridors like this that can be models for other communities, other regions, and throughout the state and throughout the nation. Caltrans has review authority for El Camino Real, and the funding being sought tonight, the $11,000 of local match, is to bring the design drawings for the segments being considered in this case study project to a 25% design level as required by Caltrans as part of their review process. The Complete Streets Case Study Project is a partnership among various agencies, including the San Mateo County Transit District, Samtrans, the City County Association of Governments, CCAG, the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, VTA, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Caltrans, and the 4 case study cities. To date, grant funds and fund support from Samtrans and CCAG have provided over $200,000 in support for the San Bruno case study alone. Additional funds are required to finalize the preliminary drawings and reports for the next phase of the Caltrans development review process. Samtrans has identified funding for most of this additional funding that's being required, but is looking to the case study cities for an $11,000 local match from each one of the cities. Providing this local match would enable the City of San Bruno to continue to participate in this case study project. This fall, one of the 4 cities will be selected for preparation of the final 100% drawings for the case study segments and be eligible for approximately $2 million in construction funding. That would be about half, almost half, of the estimated cost for construction improvements for the San Bruno segment. We as staff believe it would be advisable for the City of San Bruno to continue to participate in this process and maintain its eligibility to be considered for the final design funding and the construction funding that I've mentioned. As we all know, this segment of El Camino Real is within the transit corridors plan area, a very important plan here in San Bruno, that was adopted in February of this year. That plan, the Transit Corridors Plan, really calls for the transformation of 150 acres of key properties within the City of San Bruno. These areas include El Camino Real, they include our downtown street, San Mateo Avenue, and the idea of having a funding opportunity to provide for some of these improvements is something that staff believes we should pursue. In addition, recently, as part of the Grand Boulevard Initiatives Working Group, there was a call for projects. And approximately at least 17 cities along the Grand Boulevard submitted projects for consideration and ranking. The City of San Bruno submitted its transit corridors plan as part of the overall project call for projects. And the transit corridors plan was ranked #1 of the 17 projects. It received the highest ranking of all the projects received. We believe that there's a good chance for the City of San Bruno to gain consideration for the final funding, and therefore we believe that the City of San Bruno should continue in this process. San Bruno has, over time, taken a number of related actions in support of the Grand Boulevard Initiative. In 2008, the City of San Bruno endorsed the Grand Boulevard Initiative and directed staff to incorporate the guiding principles of the GBI in future plans for El Camino Real. In 2009, San Bruno adopted a new general plan and incorporated the GBI's guiding principles. And in February of this year, San Bruno adopted the Transit Corridors Plan, and last year, 2012, the City of San Bruno adopted a Complete Streets Policy Resolution. So we believe that the action being suggested by staff this evening is consistent with recent and past actions of the City Council. I should point out, too, though, that by appropriating the $11,000 in funds to continue in this process does not obligate the City of San Bruno to continue in this process. Should the City of San Bruno decide that it does not wish to pursue the final design that comes out, it doesn't need to do that. It's not obligated to do that. As far as aspects of the San Bruno case study design, the street improvements that are being considered, such things as lane and shoulder narrowing, intersection improvements, sidewalk improvements, median improvements, landscaping, traffic signals, sustainable street features are all being considered as part of the overall project. Tonight, we're fortunate to have both Megan Wessel and Terry Bottomley to join us. And Megan will talk more from a Samtrans perspective as to why the local match is being requested of San Bruno, and Terry will provide more detailed information on some of the design elements within the San Bruno segment. So at this point, I'd like to invite Megan and Terry to come up and speak to you.
Thank you, David, for the nice summary. Thank you again for having us this evening. So, as David said, the Grand Boulevard Initiative is an interjurisdictional collaboration seeking to revitalize the El Camino Real corridor, making it a multimodal boulevard with a mix of homes and jobs near transit. And a focus of this is also to improve travel and mobility options, which complete streets can bring. So what is a complete street? It's a street that's for everybody. It's designed to be safe and efficient for all users, so pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, people using public transportation, individuals of all abilities and all ages. Complete streets help build this balance between the different travel options. So this is an example of what El Camino Real looks like now. This is what it could look like with streetscape improvements, typical of complete street designs. And this is what it could look like with the streetscape designs mixed in with land use development and intensity. So as David said, the Tiger Tube Planning Grant was received by San Mateo County Transit District back in 2010, and it funds a complete streets project. The 4 case studies were selected through a competitive application process. And so again, those 4 are San Bruno, Daly City, San Carlos, and South San Francisco. As David said, the purpose of this is really to design model streetscape segments for the corridor and define the process for implementing a complete street design on a state highway, using this guidance to inform future improvements not only within the El Camino corridor, but other urban corridors across the nation. So the status of the San Bruno case study now, it's reaching its 25% design level. This has been achieved through numerous meetings with city staff, review of city planning documents such as the Transit Corridors Plan, as well as input from the Caltrans project development team. Caltrans being the owner of El Camino with State Route 82, they have to approve any design that's proposed on El Camino. And so we're going through their project development team process and preparing a project initiation document, which is required to initiate Caltrans' review of the design. The draft project initiation document, which is specifically a project study report, project development study, which highlights the scope of the project and kind of the technical reports that are required in future phases. That's in draft form now. A partial draft is ready, and we've been going back and forth with Caltrans on the design. The San Bruno case study funding, this summarizes what David was pointing out in the staff report. So to date, over $200,000 has been obligated to the the San Bruno case study, the San Bruno case study, and the federal earmark grant funding that you see there, the $44,000. In order to be eligible to use that towards the case study, there's a 20% local match required by the federal grant funds, and so that's what's being requested of the city to provide for the case studies. And it will bring the project to the $227,000, and this will enable the project to complete the final Caltrans project initiation document that would be needed to move into a future design phase, if desired. It would allow the city to be eligible to compete for the final design funding that David mentioned, and it would also allow the city to be eligible for $2 million towards construction that CCAG has offered for a complete street design on El Camino. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Terry to focus on the design aspects.
Okay, this is the project area that we're looking at. As David said, it extends from San Bruno Avenue on the north, on the left of the diagram here, to San Mateo Avenue and Taylor on the right. And this sort of diagram just shows the major features that are proposed as part of the Complete Streets program for all the cities. The symbols indicate things like, I'm going to use the pointer here, intersection improvements, particularly improved crossings to make the crossing safer for pedestrians and more appealing, frontage landscaping, lighting, traffic calming measures, and also possibly frontage rain gardens or other features to provide stormwater management to capture rainfall and protect the bay. This is sort of a typical existing condition throughout the corridor, really along El Camino Real, and it sort of illustrates some of the things that communities in the Grand Boulevard corridor find to be create a barrier to crossing the street. Generally wide lanes, 12 feet or more, a lack of pedestrian accommodation, crosswalk improvements, those kinds of things. And generally just sort of a totally, auto-oriented sort of environment, basically. And a lot of the Complete Streets improvements focus on fixing pedestrian crossings, providing improvements to make crossings safer and more attractive. It's perceived to be not only a pedestrian safety and traffic calming measure, but also something that could promote economic development, retail activity, and that kind of stuff along the corridor. So some of the key elements here are corner curb bulb outs at signalized intersections, highlighted crosswalks, and pedestrian refuges. Refuge typically has to be about 6 feet minimum width, and we're looking at trying to install these things at every signalized intersection where they would fit. Now, as part of this, particularly trying to build on the space that's that's acquired, that's grabbed for refuges, is extending medians too. And one of the things that you can see here is a sketch that shows, say, an existing stretch of median that's extended to create this refuge. What this does is expands the landscaping, obviously, but it also increases the pervious area, the area of the street that can absorb rainwater as part of a stormwater management effort. This is a look at sort of a typical frontage condition. We were looking at an intersection before. This is typical frontage. And throughout a lot of the corridor, you have sort of a shoulder area, 8 to 10 feet, curbside parking. Minimal pedestrian amenities, curb cuts for driveways extend across the sidewalk, highway-type lighting. And a typical approach as part of the Complete Streets program is where parking is not essential along the frontage, considering a frontage landscape strip and rain garden that can absorb stormwater, moving the curb cut and apron for a driveway out of the main sidewalk area, and new street lighting, pedestrian-oriented street lighting. In areas where parking is needed for frontage retail buildings, the proposal would be to intersperse frontage street trees and rain gardens with parking. Those are just sort of providing a broad brush, quick overview of some of the basic elements. As David said, one of the things that we're doing as part of the work is working with staff to figure out how to adapt these types of typical improvements to the specifics of San Bruno.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So with that, we have prepared a resolution for your consideration this evening, and the resolution is attached to your packet, your staff report, and the resolution reads to authorize appropriation of $11,000 of Measure M funds to complete the preliminary design drawings for the Grand Boulevard Initiative Complete Streets San Bruno case study. With that, we would be pleased to respond to any of your questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Ken?
Thank you. David, I think our chances are good. I think San Bruno has been positioned and has been complimented previously about transit corridor and transit-oriented development. The crossings has been featured in Grand Boulevard showcases and things, initially even. My question is that even though we have a very good chance of being selected, we have a 25% chance or better. Where are we as far as options as to if we're not selected? We're looking at a $2 million project that's been invested, $250,000 in design. Are there other options in grants and things, or is this something that's just going to get filed away? Until Grand Boulevard, ramps up and and takes care of, most of the cities along the corridor.
Councilmember Ibarra, this is certainly one opportunity, but not the only opportunity. But we believe it's a significant opportunity for us to pursue. There are clearly other grants that may come along over time, and in fact, as I indicated in the staff report, the estimated cost for this segment is about $4.6 million. So the $2 million funding opportunity that this presents would be significant. But still, even with that opportunity, there would be a need to identify other funding sources to complete this segment. I think that, as you indicated, there's a good opportunity here. Anytime the city has an opportunity that seems consistent with policy direction, it would be worthwhile to pursue it. And that's what we're recommending tonight.
Just curious, same kind of length in the other cities? Same? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For the people watching, they said yes. About the same.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions? Staff or consultants? Action by the City Council?
To the Chair, I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Vice Chair O'Connell.
Jim?
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Okay. Conduct of business, receive a report on the activities of the successor agency, the San Bruno Redevelopment Agency, and adopt resolutions. Correct me if I'm wrong, City Manager, I don't believe we're going to have any action this evening. This is just informational. We're going to hear about the Recognized Obligation Payment Schedule 2013-14B for the period of January 1st, 2014 through January 30th, 2014. And hear about the Long-Range Property Management Plan and hear about the amounts owed to the City of San Bruno by the former San Bruno Redevelopment Agency.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My report this evening is to provide an update on the activities of the successor agency to the San Bruno Redevelopment Agency. And I would like to reiterate what was stated in the staff report, that action by the City Council acting as the successor agency is not required on any of these items this evening. They are for informational purposes. However, resolutions were included for 3 different items in here simply to confirm the city's interest and intent related to these items. So action is not required. However, we are requesting action only to confirm the city's interest on approving the ROPS and approving the draft long-range property management plan and approving a resolution on the advances, which I'm going to go into more detail here in just a moment. So, over the course of the past 18 months, city staff have been working to meet the numerous requirements and deadlines associated with the 2 redevelopment dissolution bills, Assembly Bill X-126 and AB 1484. These activities include the completion of several different audits, preparation of items for the 12 oversight board meetings that have occurred to date, as well as the timely completion of the recognized obligation payment schedules and other reports that are required by the dissolution legislation. A recap of some of the more significant milestones that have occurred include the completion of the 2 due diligence review audits for the Low and Moderate Income Housing Fund and all other RDA funds and their respective approval by the Oversight Board. These due diligent review audits confirm the accuracy of transactions made by the successor agency and confirm the amount of fund balance remaining to be turned over to the county for distribution to the taxing entities. In total, the successor agency was required to turn over $3.7 million of remaining redevelopment agency funds to the county, of which $558,000 was returned to the city in the form of a one-time distribution of unrestricted property tax. On April 26, 2013, the successor agency received a finding of completion from the California Department of Finance, which confirms that the city has met the various requirements in the dissolution legislation and has turned over the redevelopment funds as required. The finding of completion is significant in that it allows the agency to place outstanding loan payments between the city and the former redevelopment agency on a future ROPS for repayment, and it also allows the agency to move forward with the disposition of any property, both items which I'll describe greater in just a moment. So that said, there continue to be several important activities ahead for the successor agency. The first of which is the preparation and adoption of a recognized obligation payment schedule twice a year to ensure that the successor agency receives funds for the outstanding obligations of the former redevelopment agency. The draft ROPS 1314B for the period of January 1st, 2014 to June 30, 2014 has been prepared and included as an attachment to the staff report and includes continuing payment for the debt for the construction for the police facility, subsidy payments for the provision of low and moderate income housing at the crossing development, and the payment of administrative costs to the successor agency. The next item of significance is the preparation and adoption by the Oversight Board of the Long-Range Property Management Plan that addresses the disposition and use of real property owned by the former redevelopment agency. The only property owned by the RDA is the downtown park located at 456 San Mateo Avenue. Acceptable uses of this property per redevelopment dissolution legislation include retention of the property for continuing governmental use, retention of the property for future development, the sale of the property, or use of the property to fulfill an enforceable obligation. The agency's draft long-range property management plan, which I understand the City Council has not yet had an opportunity to review as it was distributed today, has been prepared to reflect the city's strong interest in retaining this property as a park in the downtown area and its desire for the property to be transferred to the city at no cost. The other item of importance concerns the repayment of the outstanding advances of $2.9 million owed to the city from the former redevelopment agency. You might recall that under the original dissolution legislation, repayment of these advances to the city were in question. However, Assembly Bill 1484, which was adopted last summer in 2012, provided for repayment of these advances upon receipt of the finding of completion. The annual repayment amount is limited by a statutory formula that allows only for repayment if there's an increase in the residual balance of property tax distributed to all the taxing entities in a given year from the base year in 2012-13. And I know that made absolutely no sense what I just said, so I'm going to try to give an example. So in 2012-13, we can just say that, say, $3 million was available to be distributed to all the various taxing entities. If in the first year that repayment is available, which is 2014-15, that residual balance grows to $3.5 million, the difference of $500,000, 50% of that difference is what is eligible to be repaid to the city as the outstanding advance. So $250,000 would be repaid in 2014-15 in that formula, so 50% of the increase. That said, the legislation also says that 20% of the outstanding advances must be set aside for the provision of low and moderate income housing. So of the outstanding $2.9 million, the city can expect to receive repayment of $2.38 million in the form of unrestricted loan repayment, and the remaining $600,000 would be set aside for housing purposes. So assuming Oversight Board approval of the repayment of the advances, repayment is anticipated to occur over many years. The attached resolution for review this evening proposes a repayment window not to exceed 20 years, which we believe to be a safe window to ensure the repayment based on our early calculations. So that concludes my update on the successor agency items. Again, successor agency action is not required on any of these items presented this evening. However, action was being requested only to confirm the agency's position and interest. All of these items will be presented to the Oversight Board for consideration and approval this coming Tuesday, September 17th at 8 a.m. at San Bruno City Hall. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions? Kim? Action to confirm our interest. City Manager, did you have something? No? Okay. Irene?
Did somebody introduce him? No, not yet.
Is it better for us to, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Is it better for us to pass these resolutions so that when you go on Tuesday, you have them in hand? And is it, I'm assuming we're able to do that.
That was exactly the issue that I was thinking about addressing earlier. So we did create a little bit of confusion in my previous answer. I believe the finance director has clearly articulated the purpose of the resolutions and the staff's intent in bringing them forward. You have previously been presented with and acted on to approve resolutions on each 6-month period, each half-year period when the ROPS has come forward to you before, and we would anticipate continuing that practice. On each of these other 2 items, the Oversight Board has considered the issue of repayment of the outstanding balance due to the city by the former redevelopment agency, and has provided a favorable to the city's interest action that has included that item in the ROPS. So this action is fully consistent with the previous positions of the city that represent our interest in having that amount repaid. The item that's new to you tonight is long-range management plan for the one property that is owned by the former redevelopment agency, and that is the subject of decision-making by the Oversight Board. And to more specifically answer the question that the Vice Mayor has raised, The answer is yes. We believe that there will be a need for significant consideration and discussion by the Oversight Board in evaluating the disposition of that property. At the same time, I think it's fair to say that the City Council has previously identified its very strong interest in this property, and most recently, and particularly since that property was transitioned into a public space in 2007, that the City Council has identified its very strong interest and its continuing interest through the Transit Corridors Plan for public space in the downtown. As the Finance Director has indicated, the law requires this long-range property management plan. That management plan has been developed consistent with staff's understanding of the previous interest and direction by the City Council regarding the maintenance of that property in city public ownership. And at this point, I would say that the primary purpose of the resolution tonight in front of you is to provide a statement to the Oversight Board that confirms and better represents the staff presentation that will be made at the next Oversight Board meeting on this issue, and again, subject to their decision-making and determination.
Okay. So is it acceptable for us to pass these resolutions even though the agenda doesn't call for any action?
The agenda does call for action, I believe.
Okay, so then okay. Okay, great. I'll introduce all three resolutions.
Through the chair.
Rico?
So on the long-term management plan, that's what we received this evening. So I'm not prepared. I have not had the opportunity, so I'm not prepared to act on that. Unfortunately, because of having to recuse myself with the transit corridor plan and the coordination of that, I haven't been able to participate in that. I'm not saying that I'm not in favor, but I'm not prepared with that just being received and not having an opportunity to read that.
Through the chair, and I can appreciate what Councilmember Medina says, and I feel that sometimes we feel pressured to have to, go along with getting these things done because I'm going to say it, it's another fine mess that the governor got us into, and not only getting rid of redevelopment, but now having us jump through all these hoops, taking up staff time, and elected officials' times to try to weed through how to get money back that it's rightfully our cities, and also be able to pay off, our obligations. So, for clarity, for those who, are not totally confused, this is something that has to be done, and we have to stay on top of it out of fear of probably being delayed more because we're not prepared. Am I somewhat correct on that? And then hope, fortunately we only have one property, but now we have to, prolong, how we take care of, keeping this property, to satisfy the state. I mean, redevelopment was complicated enough, and this is, I believe, twice as bad.
So I introduced the resolution.
Agree?
I tried to.
Through the chair.
Yes, Rico?
Just real quick, staff had indicated trying to obviously get the lot as far as free, so that's always a great starting point. But then the other thing is you talked about the repayment of 20 years. So if you can help me understand as to the 20-year number instead of 15 versus 25 is because?
So the 20-year number was in working with the numbers that I have available, and we don't have solid numbers at this point in time. We won't have the numbers to confirm what that initial repayment amount will be until next calendar year, but based on the information that we have at this time, my early estimate is that we would expect to receive a repayment in and around $200,000 in 2014-15. So if that amount were to remain consistent, we would be able to foresee repayment in less than 20 years. However, there could be an economic downturn one year in which maybe the amount of residual property tax is less, and so a repayment doesn't occur. Or there could be a year also where it jumps up dramatically, repayment increases. It's hard to predict, obviously, so just running through those scenarios, 20 years seem to be a very fair, safe time frame to allow for the full repayment to occur. It's also been one that's been chosen by many other agencies, in that the Department of Finance does have to review all of these resolutions and the repayment schedules, and 20 years has been one of those windows in which they've recommended as a reasonable time frame. And so, while 50 years would be the safest way to go, the gut feeling is that the Department of Finance isn't going to jump on board with something in the long term, so 20 years was thought to be the safest way.
Thank you.
Okay. Irene has introduced this resolution, all of these resolutions.
All three resolutions.
If that's acceptable.
Clarification. So are we talking about the long-term management? Is that the third bullet point, or am I
The
misreading?
second one
There-
is long-term range.
Thank you.
fund.
Thank you, Carol.
Do you want me to do them separately?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to introduce the resolution recognizing the obligation payment schedule 13-14B.
Vice Chair O'Connell.
Aye.
Board Member Salazar.
Aye.
Board Member Medina.
Aye.
Board Member Rivera.
Aye.
Chair Ruane.
Aye.
I'd also, the next resolution in my packet anyway is the one about adopting the long-range property management plan. I speed read it through, so I don't see anything in here that we haven't, as you said, talked about before. My only confusion is, in here it says the property is 470 San Mateo Avenue, and in your report it's 456. So whichever one is correct, you want to make sure that's.
That's pretty good speed.
Yeah, hey. Anyway, I'd like to introduce the resolution approving the long-range property management plan.
Okay, Vice Chair. Board Member Salazar.
Aye.
Board Member Medina.
No.
Board Member Rivera.
No.
Chair Ruane.
Aye. Yes.
And I didn't say aye, but I will.
Well, I kind of said your name first.
Oh, okay. And the last resolution is approving repayment of amounts owed to the City of San Bruno by the former San Bruno Redevelopment Agency.
Vice Chair O'Connell.
Aye.
Board Member Salazar.
Aye.
Board Member Medina.
Aye.
Board Member Rivera.
Aye.
Chair Ruane.
Aye. Item 10C, receive a report and provide direction regarding the
Through the chair.
selection.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify that I think I made that. My no vote is obviously for not having the opportunity to review the document and for the vote. It's not other than that.
All right, thank you. 10C, receive a report and provide direction regarding the selection process for appointing directors to the board for the San Bruno Community Foundation.
Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all right. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, there are three main topics for tonight's discussion. The first one is to receive a report from the Council Subcommittee regarding the selection process for the board of the San Bruno Community Foundation. The second topic is going to be to review and hopefully approve the board member job descriptions that are attached to your staff report. And the third topic is to provide direction regarding the selection process for the board members. Let me just take just a second to talk a little bit about the subcommittee meeting that was held last week. The subcommittee did attend. Staff was there, as well as Mary Ellen Loyens from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. She developed the job descriptions for the board members that you see attached to your packet. It was felt that those job descriptions were important to have, although you'll look at the content of them this evening, so that applicants will basically know what they're getting into.
They're going to be in charge of a very large fund with significant responsibilities. They're not going to earn compensation. There's going to be very important duties and a large time commitment for them. And on top of all of that, they have to comply with state law governing both public entities and nonprofits. The subcommittee also discussed a potential outreach program to applicants by way of public announcements, posting in the usual places, personal contacts that the council members may wish to have, and possibly a public information session, as well as maybe advertising on the cable channel. So that was also discussed. Subcommittee also considered the possibility that the Silicon Valley Community Foundation would do an initial screening of the applicants and then make a recommendation either to the subcommittee or the full council for which applicants were qualified to fill those positions. The council would obviously retain full discretion to review all the resumes that are received, interview anybody they wished, and appoint anybody as they see fit. Before being seated on the board, another thing the subcommittee discussed is the applicants would have to undergo a standard background check. And then, assuming that they pass that check, the staff would, and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation would schedule an orientation session for the board members so they can understand more fully what all of their duties and responsibilities are. In terms of the schedule, as you'll see in the staff report, it's a bit tight, I think is perhaps an understatement. There's a firm deadline from the Secretary of State of October 22nd, and that's a result of the day that the Articles of Incorporation were filed. We actually waited as long as we could to file those Articles of Incorporation before the name San Bruno Community Foundation would expire, and we didn't want that to happen. So we're sort of moving toward the end of the process. So we do have until the 22nd for the council to make those board appointments and file that document. Fortunately, the document can be filed online, so we don't have to send anybody down to Sacramento to do it. So what staff has proposed is to receive applications from interested people, which would consist of a cover letter and a resume, by 5 p.m. on September 30th. That would be by one of two means: either personal delivery to the clerk's office, Carol Bonner, who's right here, or an email to communitynonprofit@sanbruno.ca.gov. That's communitynonprofit@sanbruno.ca.gov. That's actually the website that the city has already set up and already received expressions of interest on that website for people who want to know about the San Bruno Community Foundation. The City Council, we're proposing, would conduct interviews by October 18th, recognizing that we do have to make appointments by the 22nd, and hopefully a little bit sooner if there's plenty of time to file. Looking even farther ahead, of course, the board will have a number of significant initial decisions to make, none the least of which will be hiring an executive director and determining how it's going to staff its operations. But those and many other things are things that the initial board will have to work on after their first meeting. So at this time, it would be appropriate, I think, to hear from the subcommittee if they have any comments, any members of the public, if they'd like to say anything, discuss the job descriptions and the selection process, and then provide some direction to staff about how best to proceed now via a motion. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think I'd like to hear from the public first, if anyone has any comments or questions. Okay. Irene?
Thank you. I have a question about the background check. I'm not sure why that is part of this.
Well, we felt it was prudent simply because the board of directors will be handling what amounts to $70+ million, and we just want to make sure that we have some good actors on board. I think it's a prudent step when you're dealing with something this large.
But anything, they are not going to have access to like a check. But I mean, they're not going to have access to any of this. They're just going to make recommendations, do all those things. They're not going to actually handle any money.
We just thought it was a good idea to see what type of individual.
Members of the City Council.
One moment. Are you finished, Irene?
I don't agree, but.
Okay. All right. Michael, do you have a comment on that?
Only that we were told it's fairly typical
Yeah.
for appointees to this type of a board, so it wouldn't be uncommon for somebody on a nonprofit board to have to go through that.
No, I've been on several and never had to, so.
Okay. Okay. Tell us your name and street.
My name is Noelle Ruane, and I believe that background checks are very important when you're handling large sums of money, because recently in the paper, I would say in the last year, if you read a newspaper, there have been many embezzlements, and they've been on the county, the city, and the state level. And if we do this up front, it saves us a lot of grief. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I would
Irene?
just like to clarify, and for the audience, members of the public, the board members themselves are never going to handle any money. They don't have it. They won't be writing checks. They won't be have access to the money itself. They'll be doing budgets. They'll be making recommendations. They'll be doing all those things. The city council will review those things, and the executive director will be handling, and the finance director, whoever else is involved with that, will be actually handling money. It's similar in structure to the city council. We have a budget, we direct spending of millions and millions of dollars. We don't go through a background check. So it's kind of, partly because it says in here it would delay everything for several weeks. It could delay things for several weeks, and we're under a tight time crunch. So that's my concern.
If I may,
Chair.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. No, the only thing, on the background checks, and staff can correct me, the several weeks depends upon how many counties the applicant may live in. So I lived in San Mateo County my whole life. So the background check would probably be more expedited. If I've lived in 5 different counties in the last 7 years, then of course they have to go to the counties and pull that data. And I'm assuming it would be for felonies. Is it misdemeanors? Or I guess what does standard mean? But I am in favor of having not only the credit and the standard criminal background. It's true, we don't go through that, but we also go through an election process, and we are placed out there before the public at time of election to either be reaffirmed to continue on in our seats or to have somebody else. So for what this is and what it is doing and dealing with, I want to see it done right, and I want to have the right board in place.
Okay. And Mark, did you have a comment?
Just a brief one to add a bit of context to the background check. That was something that we weren't necessarily expecting to hear from the experts that we've retained to help us out with a process that is new to us. What we've learned and confirmed is that board members themselves, under state law, are personally responsible for the distribution of the assets of the organization, irrespective of whether the city council has retained powers, whether there's an executive director, whether there's staff doing it. And so they maintain and have personal responsibility for those. In addition, we've also learned that in the non-profit world of distributing funds, as this would be, there are a number of organizations, themselves nonprofits, who are, I think, for lack of a better term, watchdog entities that regularly review and evaluate other nonprofits on aspects of their transparency, on aspects of their governance, and those sorts of things. And one of the things that they would look at is how were the board members selected, and of course, if there's a process that is standard to be used, which we've been told it is, to have board members have these background checks, that would be something that those organizations might take into consideration. So the reason for that recommendation was that we, Silicon Valley Community Foundation, felt strongly that was an important aspect to ensure the integrity of the organization, both initially for the initial board and then into the future.
Ken?
Through the chair, I'm all in favor of that. I'm also concerned about what the subcommittee discussed as far as determining qualified applicants. Obviously, someone's going to submit an application and a resume, and they may have a list of qualifications and organizations that they've been with before. To what extent will that be checked? I mean, I would think that there'd be references and some, viable means of, verifying that this person actually did participate in another organization, and, and to verify what they actually did and what their performance was.
Right,
and
that's a
the
good
level
question.
of knowledge.
We didn't specifically, I don't remember talking about that specifically, but I would assume that that reference check would be part of the background that's done routinely as a result of the selection process.
I would expect that also.
Yeah, and I would recommend that when we develop this application, that the better, the more contact information they have to key people that will vouch for them, and a detailed description of what their duties have been in these other organizations that actually qualifies them.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else? We're looking to introduce a resolution.
So there is no resolution
Oh, I'm
in the
sorry,
packet.
looking at the next
Right,
one.
what we're
Shoot,
looking
report.
for is a motion to approve the job description. I did note, and I apologize, we found an error in the job description at about 4:30 this afternoon. The very last sentence on the very last page of the job description, where it says that the treasurer is going to participate as a member of the audit committee, turns out the treasurer can't be on the audit committee. So we apologize for that. We just caught that at the end. But otherwise, we're looking for a motion to approve that, and then to provide some direction to staff about what should the process be going forward. Do you agree with what's in the staff report? And then how should the selection process go in terms of once applications are received, who should initially vet those, and how would we proceed from there?
Okay.
If I could
Ken?
just add one more thing. On the job description, it just seems that the board secretary should have some connection with the executive director as far as, records and things, and just doesn't seem that that's included. I mean, in the other offices, you have supervising the executive director, working with the executive director. The treasurer works with the executive director with financial records, but it seems that the secretary is sort of on their own.
Oh, I see. You're noting that it doesn't say that the board secretary would have to work with the executive director.
Well, I would think that the executive director would also be a custodian of some of the records also.
Well, I think the entity ultimately is the custodian of the records. I think the board secretary is responsible for maintaining them. So that's what we tried to capture in the description there.
All right.
Okay.
Are there any other comments about the job description, or do we have a motion to approve those with those changes?
All right.
I'm prepared to make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right, so then the next question is perhaps the council could provide us with some direction in terms of the selection process itself. What we recommended in the staff report is that we would receive these applications by the 30th, 5 o'clock, as I indicated. And then I think the key question for discussion is, do you want someone, Silicon Valley Community Foundation or staff or a combination thereof, to do an initial screen of those applications and then make a recommendation to you, the full council, regarding who they think is the most qualified, recognizing that you maintain complete discretion to interview anybody you want and select anybody you want.
I would agree with that, with the understanding that we have the option, as you said, to review all applications, regardless of whether you pick them or not.
Through the chair?
Michael?
I wanted to comment that while we were discussing that option, we were thinking that if there were a really large number of applicants, that would be a good way to impartially let the best applicants sort of filter to the top and then give us a smaller pool to select from, rather than us having to filter through each one and possibly bias the selection because we know somebody or because somebody may have lobbied us. So we kind of take that partiality away from the process, and we get the best candidates to vote on. And then at that point, we didn't really discuss beyond that how the actual selection of the top candidates would go, but I imagine it would be something like what we do with our normal appointments or what we do to fill vacancies otherwise. So that's kind of the thought process behind that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding that?
I would just
part
agree
of
with the
the-
Silicon Valley aspect with it understood. And if I can use you, Mark, as an example, but obviously somebody also who does this on a more routine basis went through, maybe gave us some ideas and suggestions. However, we still had the whole list to be able to review and differ or add to or et cetera. I think this would be important to have the impartiality, and as far as we talk about this, and everybody, it's a small town and we all tend to know individuals one way or the other. As they always say, somebody's connected somehow. So I think this would be the first good vetting process, with the understanding, though, of course, that we receive everything as a whole in the end.
Certainly, if the council determines to give us that direction, we would make sure that's abundantly clear.
Okay, so everyone, Ken?
Well, and again, I mean, bringing up the verification of some of the references, is that going to be taken care of by Silicon Valley or prior to that, or, I mean?
Well, to be frank, we're still working out some of the time details in terms of when certain things are going to happen. Of course, we don't know how many applicants there are going to be. We could have 5, we could have 50. It's hard to say. So we're still working out those details, but we hope to get that vetting done as early as possible so that we don't have the background and reference checks holding up the process.
Yeah, and I don't want to give the impression that I'm not going to trust, whatever someone puts on an application, but they may not elaborate as much and just sort of say that they were involved in an organization or involved in a nonprofit, when in fact they probably just wasn't, they weren't part of a lot of the decision-making or involvement at all. So.
Well, and certainly if the full council is conducting interviews, they would, of course, be free to ask whatever questions they thought were important about a candidate's qualifications.
Okay, any other questions? I think we have direction on that.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we stick with those dates. We got.
Yeah, those dates are
couple
okay
weeks
with
in
everybody?
between.
No, I don't think we have a choice on
No,
the
we don't have a
dates.
choice.
They are what they are.
Okay.
We'll do whatever we can to make sure it occurs
Okay.
as quickly, efficiently, and solidly as possible.
Good. Anything else?
I think that will do it. Thank you
Through
very
the
much.
chair?
Michael?
If we could maybe discuss the outreach process, and I'd like to get everybody else's thoughts on
Okay, good idea.
what we should be doing. In the staff report, it talked about putting stuff out on the website, and there aren't going to be any direct mailings to anyone. But if there are any other suggestions on what we might do to solicit applications from qualified applicants, I think that's one area where, especially because of the timing, the more aggressive we can be on that outreach, or having a good plan for making sure that we're attracting the best applicants. I think that's something we could definitely flesh out a little bit.
Good. Any ideas?
I was just going to say, we keep saying Silicon Valley. Do they have any thoughts or suggestions when staff or the subcommittee met as far as ways that they find the most effective and efficient? I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a good question. We didn't specifically discuss that. I think staff came up with the ideas that we have for you in the staff report, which is, posting, announcement on the cable system, obviously announcement at this meeting. We could certainly ask the mayor, for example, to make an announcement at the beginning of a subsequent city council meeting to make sure that goes out. It's correct, we didn't talk about any direct mailings to anybody, and then of course we talked about, we understand that there may be personal contacts between council members and individuals who might approach them who are interested, so.
I don't know what the time, excuse me, I don't know what the timeline is on Focus. and as far as this deadline, it may not meet it, is my thought. I appreciate the normal routine and how we post things and how we announce it here or it's on Channel 1. I think we need to go way outside that box. And I think it's important that the groups that participate in this community, that we have maybe on rosters as far as various groups, they all obviously have a connection here. And I really think it's imperative that we go beyond that to a degree that's important that somebody says, yes, I did receive that, or I did hear about that, or I did pass that information on. I'd like to have it more saturated than going through the normal process or protocol that we sometimes do for maybe these meetings, as an example.
Right. Yeah, I heard the city clerk saying possibly putting this in the newspapers, maybe getting it out to the patch.
Yeah, I was going to suggest a press release.
We'll brainstorm that tomorrow morning and come up with some good ideas.
Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, I think one sort of disadvantage we have is that when a nonprofit would go out and solicit board members, they may look at people that are sitting on other boards and people that have other positions. But since we have some very specific requirements on our particular board, our pool is that much smaller, and I think because of that we need to be a lot more aggressive in our recruitment.
Yeah, it's a hybrid, for sure. So,
All right, thank you very much.
Good. Okay, great. Now, item 10D. Adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a sole source contract with Aura Tech Controls Environmental Instrumentation to furnish and install 3 FlowDAR flow meters for the dry weather flow monitor at 7th Avenue and Tanfran Avenue project in the amount of $56,226 and a construction contingency of $8,434.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Council. My name is Yoon-Jun Kim. I serve as the City Engineer for San Bruno. The city's wastewater is treated jointly through the jointly owned South San Francisco San Bruno Water Quality Control Plant. The city's wastewater is conveyed through sewer mains on 7th Avenue and Tanfran Avenue before flowing into South San Francisco for treatment. The city has 2 flow meters at these locations to measure the flows that come from our city. The flow meters are important because the treatment costs that are shared with South San Francisco are based upon proportions of flow volume treated, and also knowledge of the sewer flow characteristics is important for the city to properly manage our sewer system. It helps us to understand the sewer system condition, determine inflows and infiltrations in wet and dry weather conditions, and the effectiveness of best management practices in operating and maintaining our system. Irregularities in flow measurement data from the existing flow meters over the past few years have been identified. The city hired Whitley, Burchett & Associates, who are experts in the field of sewer flow monitoring, to design the best solution to monitoring our sewer flows for accuracy and long-term reliability. Whitley Burchett has evaluated the various options to provide accurate and reliable flow metering. In consideration of our specific site conditions, the FlowDAR meter is the recommended alternative. This flow meter will provide equal or superior accuracy to all other options considered and can operate in the most difficult conditions, including flows with high solids content, high temperature, shallow and caustic flows, and high velocities. The recommendation consists of replacement of the 2 existing meters on Tanfran Avenue and 7th Avenue, and installation of a 3rd meter to measure flows from a 12-inch sewer line on Tanfran Avenue, which is currently unmetered. The proposed flow meters do not require contact with the sewer flow and can be recalibrated if subsidence or ground movement occurs in the future. Some other advantages of this type of meter include ease of installation without additional excavation, and they will not interfere with sewer main cleaning operations, and they are relatively low in cost at $56,226. The costs of the other alternatives range from $71,000 to $208,000. Ortec Controls Environmental Instrumentation is the only vendor that provides this type of flow meter. No other vendor or manufacturer provides a comparable product at this time. This type of meter is being utilized in numerous other agencies in the Bay Area, including Stanford University, the City of San Mateo, City of Half Moon Bay, City and County of San Francisco, and City of Santa Clara. The sole source bid amount of $56,226 includes furnishing and installing the 3 flow-dar meters complete and in place. The installation includes the flow meters, the data collection systems, the telecommunication systems, and training to our staff. Staff recommends that Council adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Ortec Controls Environmental Instrumentation to furnish and install 3 flow-dar meters in the amount of $56,226 and a construction contingency of $8,434. Also, here is a diagram of how the flow meter works. The flow meter uses 2 types of sensors. It uses a radar sensor to determine velocity, and then an ultrasonic sensor determine the depth of the flow. The flow dar actually sits above the flow, so there's no touching sensor to the flow, so solids will not get caught up on the sensors. This concludes my presentation, and I'm here for questions now.
Questions of staff? Ken?
Thank you for that. I mean, I guess a few of us were asking the question, how can you measure without measuring? And I know you've explained in the past how, the silt buildup and things, and you get an inaccurate reading. What if there's a silt buildup here? I mean, do we actually know what the actual flow of, flow material? And I mean, and it's interesting to know you've got a 50,000 plus piece of equipment there, but we've got, I don't want to even say what's flowing through there, but you're talking about radars and ultrasonics and sensors and things. What is, do we have any indication of how effective and how durable these mechanisms are in the other cities?
There's actually a long list of references, even in the Bay Area, where the different agencies have all given positive feedback for using these flow meters for billing purposes and for just measuring flows for a sewer treatment plant, as well as just monitoring their flow volumes in their sewer systems. There's also another consulting engineer that was consulted on this that are also experts in flow monitoring, and they highly recommended this system too.
Well, it didn't answer the question, but I'm just...
Generally speaking, we do have to keep our sewer mains clean, and that's as part of our regular maintenance. The fortunate thing about these types of flow meters, there is no inflow sensor, and the sensors also, not only they utilize depth, but they also calculate velocity. So there are times when solids could back up. It's possible where the flow actually stops, but you have a depth. This would know that there's a 0 flow on that if it stopped.
Okay.
While other sensors, they would think that since you have a depth in there, it may have X amount of volume flowing. But this one is kind of a double censored.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff?
Through the chair.
Michael?
It's not often that you get a solution that's the best solution and also the least expensive solution. So I'm wondering if there's a catch. Is there any ongoing maintenance? Is there any operational cost that's not reflected in the purchase of the equipment?
The maintenance and operation of this type of system is no different than the other types of systems. In fact, it's probably less. The other systems, you cannot recalibrate it. If there's subsidence or ground movement, then it will not operate properly. This type of system, you can actually recalibrate it because it's also measuring velocity as well as depth. And there's these complicated computer algorithms that you can recalibrate to account for the different flow conditions.
And the life expectancy of the device is about the same as it is for the other devices?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Rico?
Robert Rico, 7th Avenue. A couple of questions. What influence does the effectiveness of the ultrasonic depth have if there's sediment that's not moving? In other words, you can say you have so much depth in there, but are you assuming that the whole depth is moving? And when you're measuring the flow by the radar, that's looking at the top part of the flow, or can it tell you that all of it's moving? Or in other words, could you have surface movement and have sediment build up and not accurately gauge the volume that's actually moving? Thank you.
It is possible to have irregular readings due to too much silt buildup, but one of the things that's good about this type of system is we're not required to raise the floor at all, as with the other type of flume systems. You have to raise the floor, and this is 7th Avenue has a very shallow and not shallow, but shallow sloped main, and so any type of movement in that would throw off the readings on the other type of systems. This one will still give you readings, but we still have to keep it generally clean, but not to the extent that it's not to the level of sensitivity that the other systems have.
Okay, thank you. Anything else or action by the council?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Our last item is item 10E, adopt a resolution or resolutions confirming project compliance as required for the acceptance of Metropolitan Transportation Commission award of the Safe Route to Transit Grant Program in the amount of $500,000, and also authorizing the city manager to execute a funding agreement with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority for the award of the Measure A pedestrian and bicycle grant in the amount of $350,000 for the Transit Corridor Pedestrian Connection Improvement Project.
Through the chair, before I apologize, I did check with the city attorney since it had a transit corridor plan and or something related to it, and I was informed by the city attorney that I do not need to recuse myself on this item.
Honorable Mayor, members of City Council, my name is Tina Singh. I'm one of the associate engineer with the Public Services Department. The objective of the Transit Corridor Pedestrian Connection Improvement Project is to achieve the vision set forth in the general plan, which incorporates the guiding principle of the Grand Boulevard Initiative that you have heard earlier this evening. In general, the goal of the project is to improve transit connection and to create a pedestrian-friendly environment that promotes walking and use of public transit. This project intends to capture the pedestrian enhancement features that are consistent with the Grand Boulevard Initiative, the General Plan, and the Transit Corridor Plan. In line with the City Council's direction, staff have actively pursued grant opportunity, and the city has successfully obtained multiple grants for this project. Most recently, the city has completed the first construction project with a federal grant. 2 state-funded grants are now available to fund the subsequent phases. These 2 grants are $500,000 from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in the Safe Routes to Transit program, and $350,000 from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority in the Measure A pedestrian and bicycle program. There's a 3rd grant opportunity in which the City Council authorized staff to submit an application this past July. Staff will return to the City Council if the project is selected to receive funding. The map behind me shows the highlights of the improvements that are eligible for the 2 grants that I mentioned earlier, the transit, Safe Route to Transit, and the bicycle and pedestrian program. In general, street trees, irrigation system, sidewalk improvement, bike racks, and bike route on San Bruno Avenue. There we have accessible curb ramp on San Bruno Avenue and El Camino Real. Also, the wayfinding signage on San Bruno Avenue, Huntington Avenue, and El Camino Real. pedestrian lighting improvements and public arts on the I-380 overpass at El Camino Real. And finally, landscape bulbs at feasible location throughout these three corridors that's highlighted behind me. The two grants do not have local match requirements. However, both grants do not fund city overhead costs. This means city must fund the overhead costs, which is approximately $15,000. The city has sufficient local Measure A funds to support this cost. If the city council accept these two grants, there are two separate resolutions that needs to be adopted, one for each grant and basically based on each of their grant requirements.
Good. Any questions for Tina? Ken?
I don't have any questions. I'm just need to make a statement that I'm very proud of where we're at with this, because in my 8+ years representing the city and the CCAG Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, we're seeing the growth in funds, for available for cities to do these types of projects, and to be able to sit there and and have our city staff make proposals, for these grants, and them being recognized and actually praised, and then also seeing that the transit corridor plan goes hand in hand with it, just makes it that much easier, to get these projects done. So, compliment staff and all your hard work. I know there's still hard work, but we've laid the groundwork, and you got to be proud that we'll be able to $500,000. It's a lot of money to be able to get from elsewhere. So.
Anyone else? Irene?
Yeah, I echo what he said. I think it's fabulous. I just have a question about the timing. Once you put all this in, when would we know if we got accepted or not?
Staff be informed by the grant agency that they will try to provide the agreements to us for execute at the end of this month, and hopefully we can send everything back to them early next month. And as indicated in the staff report, with that timeline, we can enter design stage early this next year, and they're in the following fall. So basically, fall 2014, we can start construction.
Okay, I guess I'm a little confused. Are we for sure getting the grant?
Yes. These two resolutions are basically accepting the two grants.
Okay.
We got the money.
I introduce the resolutions.
Take them both together?
Yes.
Did I have an introduction?
Yes.
You did.
Okay, Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 11, reported commissions, boards, and committees. We don't have a report this evening. Item 12, comments from council members. Anyone?
Nope.
Item 13, closed session. We don't have a closed session this evening. Item 14 is meeting adjourned until September 24th, right?